For some perspective, it's less than 3 years since ChatGPT launched. It seems as though it's all anyone wants to talk about. We deeply want to believe that artificial intelligence is amazing, that it will change everything it touches. I'm not sure if that's optimism or something a bit more troublesome, magical thinking. Investors right now, they are not funding startups that don't have an AI angle. At the big end of town, well, they all want their employees to have strong AI skills, that is, when they're not threatening them with massive job losses caused by those same AI skills. And students right now, they are walking a tightrope between plagiarism, cheating, and a complete implosion in how they get assessed by educators. It's true that everything is changing, but mostly what's changing lies between our ears. Although it's real enough, artificial intelligence right now, it's mostly mind games. What's going on has not that much to do with technology and a lot about what our fears and our hopes for the future look like. It's a mirror, and we're getting a really good look at ourselves. G'day, I'm Mark Pesce. The coming next billion seconds will be the most transformative in human history. The arrival of AI looms as one big reason this will prove true. Over the course of the next 5 episodes, we're doing a deep dive, delving into the nuts and bolts of artificial intelligence. Is it really that amazing, or is it just so much hype? In our excitement, are we losing the sight of the other meaning of AI, that it's always imperfect? That's the title for this mini-series, because as good as it is, and it's far better than it was years ago, it still has a long way to go. We'll kick off this series with an investigation of what AI can do today, with some lessons from the coalface, and we'll be breaking it to you gently that there are no magic wands for sale on this episode of The Next Billion Seconds. A lot of hype, hundreds of billions of dollars invested. Then someone has the audacity to come along and point out that the emperor's wearing no clothes. In July 2025, a report from researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology spelled it out clearly.
Despite $30 to $40 billion in enterprise investment into Gen AI, this report uncovers a surprising result in that 95% of organizations are getting zero return. The outcomes are so starkly divided across both buyers, enterprises, mid-market, SMBs, and builders, startups, vendors, consultancies, that we call it the Gen AI divide. Just 5% of integrated AI pilots are extracting millions in value, while the vast majority remain stuck with no measurable P&L impact. Enterprise-grade systems, custom or vendor-sold, are being quietly rejected. 60% of organizations evaluated such tools, but only 20% reached pilot stage, and just 5% reached production. Most fail due to brittle workflows, lack of contextual learning, and misalignment with day-to-day operations.
That's the truth of the matter. And I know this because for nearly 2 years, I've been living it. I didn't just let the AI revolution run past me. People have been asking me why the next billion seconds has gone mostly quiet. Well, it's not because I was relaxing. Far from it. I dived headlong into the business of AI, and I didn't do it alone. I grabbed one of the smartest and wisest people I know, Drew Smith. Listeners to this podcast know Drew as the special correspondent on the Next Billion Cars series. But for a year and more, he and I set up shop as Wisely AI, a consultancy helping businesses to make safe and wise choices on how to use AI in their businesses. Drew, welcome back to the Next Billion Seconds.
Thanks, Mark. It's so lovely to be back here. And just to put perhaps another nail in the coffin, I don't know. It seems like that might be where we're headed. I just want to refer to another study that was conducted by none other than Microsoft in collaboration with the UK departments of Business and Trade. Now, they purchased 1,000 licenses of Microsoft Copilot. About 30% of the users consented to having their data analyzed. And what emerged was a picture that is perhaps not so pretty. So there are about 63 working days in the trial. Copilot was used on average 1.14 times per day by those users. Now, there were users that said that they found that they were working more effectively with Microsoft Excel, yet when the data was analyzed after the fact, they were actually working slower and less accurately with Microsoft Excel.
This parallels, of course, a study of software engineers open source software engineers who thought they were all working better with their new tools, and it turns out, no.
100%. And the absolute clincher in this report is this line: "We did not find robust evidence to suggest that time savings are leading to improved productivity." This is from Microsoft, Mark. This is from the snake oil salesperson themselves.
Exactly. The folks who have pushed all of their chips onto the table and said, let it ride.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, with that kind of, shiny context in place.
This is exactly, of course, why we set up that consultancy, because we could see what was going on. We could see the stories that were being told, and we wanted to do our best to help people negotiate a situation where there wasn't a lot of ground truth in sensible ways. And I've picked, and I have to admit, I've cherry-picked 3 of our clients, and I want to sort of talk about them completely anonymously, right? But I want to talk about them in terms of what we learned about how AI has to work for people, if it's going to work at all. And the first one, if you want to sort of give us a little bit of background, this was a marketing firm, right?
Yeah, marketing and PR firm, very, very specialized. They've carved out a really superb niche. And what is fantastic about this business is that they had a very clearly defined workflow or set of work processes that got them from the point of initial engagement with a client to delivering absolutely banging results for these clients time after time after time. And what that made it really easy for us to do was what we discovered was job number 1 when it came to determining whether generative AI was going to have any real value within the organization. And that is identify very thin slices in the overall work process where you could start to experiment, where you could start to establish constraints around how these tools were going to operate, to see whether the upheaval of implementing the tools was going to be worth it.
There's another narrative that's present in particularly marketing and sales right now, which is that AI is basically going to put everyone out of work, and your customers are all going to get custom emails on demand, and the da-da-da-da-da, and it's all going to be magic. And our experience was exactly the opposite, that in fact what the clients wanted was something that was so specific and custom and, oh, by the way, human, that you couldn't dispense with your copywriter because the copywriter was the core of what the client was paying for.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting tension here. Look, there's an awful lot of copy that gets written that never gets read. Right? Let's be honest.
It's there to fill space.
Exactly. But in this case, for this business, success for this business's clients depended almost entirely on the quality of that copy and the ability of that copywriter to capture the imagination of the people that were going to be reading it. And it's a very human quality. It's a very human capability to be able to do that.
We talk about these tiny slices. This is the thing that what both of us really, I think, learned in this was that it was going to be a game of inches, right? That the kinds of improvement they were going to get was going to be maybe 5% here, maybe 10% there if you're lucky, maybe 15% over here. But it wasn't going to be tapping the organization with the magic wand and all of a sudden everyone is 10x more efficient.
No. And I think the other thing that's worth bearing in mind here is that it was going to fundamentally change the nature of how people engaged with their work as part of this organization as well. And perhaps understandably, there was some reluctance on behalf of team members like copywriters to fully engage with this technology, because it's not that they could see themselves being done out of a job, but there was an underlying sense that what they were bringing to the table was in some way being questioned. The value of what they were doing was being questioned.
And again, if you take a look at what's going on in many other marketing departments, you can see why they would be feeling that way, because the examples are out there of basically entire marketing departments and advertising agencies, whole divisions basically being laid waste because someone thinks that really the copy can be generated by a computer and that's going to be good enough, and that's that.
I was just going to say, I think it points to a really interesting sort of cultural aspect of this domain, which is what happens when fear starts to enter into decision making. And what we noticed is that people start to become quite binary. You know, it's pass, fail, yes, no, it's going to work, it's not going to work. Because people are afraid of the technology. People are afraid that it is coming for their jobs. So there's a really interesting question for leaders, and this was a conversation that we had with the MD of this business, is how do you frame the conversation around this technology that doesn't, in such a way that it doesn't result in an immediate allergic response?
Or in the case of certain CEOs who are out there right now screaming that they want to fire all of their staffs, and they're going to, and replace them with AI, how do you claw that back once you said it? And I think it was the CEO of Shopify that was caught out basically saying, oh, we're going to let everyone go and replace them all with AI, and had to, sort of eat crow with all of that, because first off, they can't do it. And second off, it really is kind of bad to signal to your staff that you would value a computer more than them.
Well, and it's not just Shopify. We've seen the same thing at Klarna. Klarna got rid of a whole bunch of their marketing staff, had to bring them back. I think in Australia, CBA quite infamously made some very bold pronouncements to the press and then had to eat their hat. So it's happening all over the place.
Now, the one thing that was really interesting and surprising to me about this project is when we took a look at the business, as you say, it's a question of how much the business wants to change. And we offered them a proposal of really transforming the business into something else entirely, what we were calling a one-man band, but really I think the language that's being used now more publicly is called a tiny team, which is very highly augmented individuals who are working together in a very close-knit way with a completely redesigned workflow to be able to do something much more productively than they might have been able to do the old-fashioned way. And it seems very tantalizing, but we actually aren't seeing a lot of instances of that on the ground yet. Is it because we don't understand our workflows enough, or are the tools not good enough, or is it some combination?
I think what actually happened in this instance is there was a third scenario that we proposed to this organization, which was you actually let software eat your business as it currently stands and you become something completely different. Guess which path they've gone down?
Which path have they gone down?
They are essentially destroying their business as it currently exists and investing in the creation of an agency in a box. So they don't have to do anything. They just license this organization out. Yeah, I mean it's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
All right, I guess we'll check back and see how that's going for them at some point. So This brings us to our second client, which is very different. Second client, so financial services. And one of the things that they really wanted our advice with was once they sort of got their heads around AI, they wanted to say, okay, is this a tool that we can use with our underwriters? An underwriter will assess his risk, right? So they take a look at all the documents for a business and they go, okay, well, this company is creditworthy, we can give them this much money, or this company's not creditworthy, we have to retract this much money, all of those different kinds of questions. And the task of being an underwriter, although it sounds very straightforward, very binary in that sense, actually there's a lot of vibe involved in it, right? Because you're actually digesting a lot of documents and you're looking for the weak signals in the documents that may be telling you that things are not quite as rosy as the potential client would want. And they were looking for ways to be able to make that process more rigorous with AI. And I think that led us to a better understanding of exactly how rickety the AI tools were.
Yeah, because this is where the good old H word enters into the conversation, Mark. Hallucinations. and I think your characterization of this work of the underwriters as looking for the weak signals really highlights just how unbelievably dangerous hallucinations can be in this particular space. I just want to refer back to that Microsoft study that I mentioned. So 22% of the Department for Business and Trade guinea pigs, this is according to the Register, responded to the assessors that they did identify hallucinations. 43% did not, and 11% were unsure. Now, so that's like, 33% of people in that study who are like, yeah, I did, or I'm not really certain about it. If you're making decisions that are worth millions, tens of millions of dollars as a financial underwriter, that kind of margin for error just does not work.
It immediately rules you out, not just in finance, but also in medicine and also in the law, right? High precision things where, and engineering, I don't want a bridge that was designed with hallucination in it, right? There's a whole class of applications. Marketing, okay, I think you're probably allowed to hallucinate a bit, but not so much in medicine.
Marketing execs have been hallucinating for a long time. To come back to the underwriters, though, it's not as if we couldn't support this organization in working out ways to start to mitigate the risk of hallucination.
Yeah.
But what we ran into was a work process that actually became more cumbersome because it required more cycles of review through multiple different AI tools in order to essentially cross-check and verify. And at the end of the day, the human was still on the hook because none of these organizations providing the AI tools were going to take responsibility for an hallucination that led to a multi-million-dollar loss.
And they all tell you that they basically disavow any knowledge of whatever this machine happens to be saying that we're selling you time on. I agree with you. It's all kind of, weird. And the other thing was that as we sort of delved into the tools, we also saw that there was one tool that didn't work that well. So Copilot didn't work that well at being accurate. The other tool that did, which was Notebook LM, which is a really lovely tool that you can feed a lot of stuff to and tends to be quite accurate in that situation. They wanted to be able to use it, but they were in the Microsoft universe, as almost all businesses are. And moving data from one universe to the other is not just hard to do, but it also brings up all sorts of security issues. That as a financial services company, when you're dealing with private data, there's a whole set of questions that get invoked. So there's a lot of stickiness around tools. People think, you can just use the best tool. Well, actually, for most businesses, that's actually not true.
Yeah, and it was amazing watching our lead client just go through multiple cycles of speaking to, say, Microsoft reps, trying to work out where the hell their data sat, what would happen to the location of that data if it got fed into a certain tool. We went through so many cycles of trying to work out how to clean data. And I think this is, we hear about this a lot in the enterprise AI space. So much of the quality of the output is going to be dependent on the cleanliness of the data that you're feeding in. And I think to use your framing, everybody's looking for a magic wand that all of a sudden makes good data governance and good data practices obsolete. Newsflash, they're even more important now than they once were because you're going to run into the hallucination issue.
You can't outrun governance. You can only be strung up by it. You're absolutely right about this. So it's interesting because, of course, the last of our three clients was in the government space. And we had a great time working with them. They were lovely people. We prepared a banger of a presentation and we went down and gave it to them. And the presentation was kind of, I love it because it was a back and forth between you and I, where I would come up and talk about all the train wrecks and you would come up and talk about all the cool things people could do.
I think where we netted out, judged on their response, was somewhere deep in train wreck land. Yeah.
But that was also, I mean, it was very much our brief with all of these clients to be very honest with them about how they could use these tools safely and the things that they could not use these tools for safely. And I feel as though we did them a service, which ended up meaning that we didn't get continued business with them because, at least in this particular case, they're like, "Oh, that's amazing. Thank you very much." And then they never really picked up the phone to go, "Oh, that's right. You know, you owe us one more presentation, one more meeting," because we feel as though they've just gone, "Okay, we're just going to wait."
Yeah. I mean, having people land at, "No, we absolutely should not do this," is not a great business model for folks like you and I.
It's rewarding in the sense that we're helping people make good decisions. At that level, it's extremely rewarding. But at the financial level, you're right; it is extremely self-defeating.
Exactly, because we're kind of a one and done. But again, it comes back to the fear that is so inherent in this space. And there's kind of fear at an organizational level in sort of suffusing these organizations. But I'm also seeing fear deep in the guts of the people who are charged with making decisions about this stuff, because they are carrying not only the weight of consideration for their own careers on their shoulders, but they're also having to think through what are the implications for the teams or the organizations that I lead. And it's very, very difficult to come to a place of clarity and discernment and connection with the people that you work with when you're operating from fear.
There's many different kinds of that fear. The fear that I find the most interesting is that fear of missing out, that FOMO. I was talking to a client who is one of the leading brands in the world, and they gave me their AI plan, and they're already well executing on it. And I'm looking at it, and they're checking all the boxes. They're doing everything right, including, as we know, bringing the staff along, right? And their biggest fear, and basically the first line on the call was, "Oh my God, we feel like we're so behind everyone else." And we've heard the same thing from others of our clients. That there's this perception that everyone else is doing more with AI than they are.
I think AI at the moment is, well, and let me be more specific. I think the application of large language models in the enterprise space, let me frame it that way. It's a little bit like teenage sex. Like everybody's talking about it, but nobody's really sure what they're doing. There's just a lot of bump and uglies going on.
And it also feels like they're not going to be satisfied with, we're going to learn more about our workflows, maybe get some small gains here and there. We're going to spend some time consulting broadly. It feels like telling people that that's a really great place to start. Almost it disappoints because you are literally breaking their magic wand. You're taking it out of their hand. Yeah, I know you thought this is magic. Snap. I'm sorry, it's not.
Well, okay. So to come back to the MIT report that you referenced in the opening to this, so the companies that were surveyed had collectively sunk between $35 and $40 billion into generative AI. 95% of those companies had little to nothing to show for it.
And, again, the belief runs deep. I mean, I don't even know what else to say. Is that it's persistent, it's stubborn. When we think that we have a thinking machine, the first thing we want to do is use it everywhere. And we don't have a thinking machine, at least not anything that's good enough to replace a human in most circumstances for most tasks. And so you have to wonder how we get people to a place where they can start to think rationally about new tools rather than magically about something that doesn't exist.
Well, okay, like what are the lessons that we've learned from our work? One is that if you're looking at overhauling your existing business processes, then you have to get absolutely forensic about how those processes are working to be able to identify, as we've said, the thin slices to which generative AI is suited, right? And then start experimenting with a parallel process that incorporates generative AI and your existing work process and see, okay, are the gains that we're getting across the thin slices that we've identified actually worth it?
Yeah, worth the time and the investment. And right now, everyone thinks, oh my God, it's a magic wand. It'll fix everything. People are acting as though their Christmases have all come at once. And that is not the best way to be thinking about this, but people just want to believe. And from the look of things right now in 2025, slow and steady is going to win this race. Drew, thank you so much for joining us on The Next Billion Seconds.
You're welcome, Mark. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
In our next episode, we'll sit down with John Alsop, hot on the heels of his Engineering AI conference. Is AI the best tool ever for software engineers, or is it just a time waster that will never live up to the hype? That's on our next episode of The Next Billion Seconds. The Next Billion Seconds was written and presented by Mark Pesce. Big thanks to Drew Smith for joining us. The show was mixed by Luke Cramp, produced by Medium Productive executive producer Josh Butt. If you like our show, please remember to follow us in your favorite podcasting app. And if you know someone who might be interested in these topics, please share our show with them. This is Mark Pesce, thanking you for listening.